Hello everyone, my name is Neeta Solanki and welcome to Wednesday's Wisdom, Show Up to Scale Up. And today my guest will be Emma Ross, who is registered with the Association of Counselling and Psychotherapy. She's also a member of the Association of Counselling and Therapy Online, as well as an NLP practitioner. Now I have seen Emma in action. She is calm, so thoughtful, and such a game changer in terms, when it's mindset. I mean, she's definitely helped me in so many ways as well. And she helps business owners to focus on mental health, anxiety, can't even say the word. And so we're going to call her on in a moment. Let me introduce myself. So I will be your host for the next 30 to 40 minutes. And so I'm Neeta, and I believe I'm so passionate about having a healthy business owner behind a healthy business. I focus on CEOs and to support them as a human being to whether it's providing relaxation and healing therapies or helping them to scale their business, using my 25 years of experience in accountancy, technology, business processes, strategy management to build sustainable growth. And my superpower is to put that business owner first, to make sure that they are challenged, understood and heard in life as well as in business. And so what I'm going to be doing now is introducing the lovely Emma, and if I can just type her name in, and she'll be coming on in a moment. And it is so hot here that I haven't even got a fan. It was like just one of those things, but I do have the window open to keep me cool. So welcome Emma, and welcome to our guests as well that have joined as well. Emma, please introduce yourself. What do you do? Why do you do it? And what inspires you?
Hi, so my name is Emma. I'm a counsellor and a coach based in Cardiff in South Wales in the UK. And I help mainly women who are going through work-related change and stresses to help them manage with that. So that can be things like adapting to a new role or redeployment and redundancy, coming back after a break. So it could be career break, maternity, sick leave. And what I'm doing more of now is helping small business owners. And I'm also talking about an idea that I'm building on and doing some research to at the moment. So basically, it's about supporting the owners of small to medium-sized businesses with their own mental health, because a lot of the time, the thing that holds us back most is ourselves. Through anxiety or stresses and fear of the unknown and things like that, and also members of their team. And what I found out through research recently is that when it comes to the smaller businesses, in the UK at least, only half of them have that support in place for themselves and their staff, sometimes because they don't know it exists, they don't know how to access it. And sometimes it's they think, oh, well, that's what the big organizations do. That's going to be really expensive. And that's not necessarily so. And I've also been looking into the way that when it comes to employee assistance programs, which is what the Wellbeing angle in the larger organizations tends to be, a lot of the time it's a case of count per head. Let's keep filtering out, like signposting sometimes to free stuff with a charge is a bit cheeky, and just reducing down that way, and basically just trying to shift people as opposed to trying to get the help and support to those who really need it. On.
And do you find that obviously there has been a lot of attention on mental health and well-being, but our business owners actually, because the way I see it is that if someone is off, long-term sickness, or they actually decide to leave work, then for employers, it's actually going to be costing them more in the long run in terms of, providing temporary cover or providing, sick pay, as well as possibly rehiring somebody, which, it's always more expensive to hire somebody new than to, continue with their existing staff. what is the biggest pressure, or do you find that employers are now actually taking attention in terms of the importance of well-being, other than the social media presence that's kind of raised the awareness of it?
Well, there's two prongs to that, and a part of it is basically to do with the culture in an organization as well, and that's why I'm bringing my other skill sets in, because I'm basically a senior business analyst. I look at that side of things and improving companies and their processes. What can they do to raise basically the atmosphere, the dynamics, improve things? Because ultimately it's like failure demand if someone's so stressed that they have to go off sick. And it's supporting them in that way. So first of all, for the individual, hearing them out and understanding what they can do for themselves. Because sometimes, take it for example, new managers, they're like, oh crumbs, I'm faced with this, because there's that fear initially. It's like, oh crap, what do they want me to do? And it's a case of, well, yes, the company supports the individual, but they also do things to support themselves, and factoring that both of those in and coming together to agree, well, this is the situation, ideally without blame, which is about the culture side. Where do we go from here, and what do we do about it?
And so I can see here that you're actually working with, the small to medium-sized businesses to be more proactive rather than reactive, by building that culture so that the employees are feeling supported, they've been understood, but at the same time, they're not suffering in silence, which I think a lot of people do naturally. And so that they have that safe place within work to actually reach out, because it could be challenges within their personal life as well as within work, for them to actually open up so they can be more productive, again at work, but also at the end of the day when they go home. And are you able to share some of the results, or some of the feedback that you've been getting from your clients, Emma?
Yes, of course. So with some of them, it's been a case of, for example, I'm thinking of a lady who, aging parent, ended up having to take on more of a caring role for a parent, and of course that was having a knock-on effect on her work, and she didn't feel like she could bravely bring that up, whilst people pleasing and not wanting to bring the side down in either respect, trying to be everything to everyone, and basically running herself ragged. It was affecting her memory, her sleep, general health. And then it was a case of coming together, talking about that. It's like, well, what things do you have influence and control over? We can part at the bits you don't, because they're going to happen regardless. So maybe, you needn't worry about that quite so much, because that's going to happen anyway. Let's focus on what you do have control over.
And so, in terms of, what is the typical client journey that you take your clients through? Is it a case of, announcing it or adopting it without the employees knowing? What kind of approach do business owners, those smaller business owners, take in order to have that positive impact on their employees?
Well, it depends on how they want to do it. So quite a few companies, basically when it comes to referral, will want the staff to talk to them and refer onwards, so they have sight of it. Sometimes they do that because they're a bit scared of, if people self-refer, we might be inundated with that.
Yeah, true.
Whereas in practice, that doesn't tend to, or at least it hasn't reflected that way, hasn't been the case so far from what I've observed.
So do you do group sessions, or do you actually provide those one-to-one services, or is it a mixture depending on the size of the business?
It's more of a mixture. So I can do talks to groups, and recently I've done a talk with a housing association that was for Mental Health Day on loneliness. I did one recently for a large group there was about 200 people on anxiety and depression. And it was just ultimately about giving them simple to apply tools for themselves so that they're able to look after themselves, well, stop them sliding further. Because a lot of times it's acknowledging there's a problem, knowing what to do about it, which isn't always the case. And then where do I go next? Or what can I do if the problems are bigger, if I don't know what to do?
And so
plan in place that way.
Typically, what kind size of, I mean, I suppose every employer should actually, you know, consider the well-being of their employees and everything. But in order to, you know, what would be a typical entry level for businesses to kind of say we need to, you know, we can't actually manage this internally. We need to have someone external to come in to just kind of, you know, outsource it to experts like yourself.
Well, there's not really a minimum. If it's a single business owner, they can contact, because ultimately they, if they're out of action, everything else is out of action. You know what I mean?
And I suppose that's the thing, isn't it? It's a case of, it doesn't matter what size of business you are, you know, whether you're a one-man band or you've got a team, you know, it's time to look at yourself, to say, ask those inner questions. You know, how am I feeling? Am I actually looking after myself so that I can perform well in business? Am I looking after? Am I having that downtime that I need so that I have, you know, want to get out of bed to actually serve my clients, serve, you know, be there for, you know, and again, it could be their team and everything. Because I always say that, you know, it's not being selfish to actually have that self-care on yourself. Do you find that you need to actually, I wouldn't say convince, but actually make, you know, create that awareness for businesses out there? Again, it doesn't matter the size, but do you find that enough awareness isn't out there? Or, you know, what are your thoughts on that?
I think it's getting better, but it also needs to be not handled in a tokenistic kind of way. So ultimately, you can't pour from an empty cup. True. You've got to have the energy and the resource, if it's resource based, to provide. Else you're running on empty. You can't serve the people that you're aiming to serve fully. It affects the quality of what you do. And that goes for the head of a business, their managers, their employees, all the way down.
Yeah. And I mean, I know you know, just again, look at myself to kind of say the 5 areas. Am I getting enough sleep? Am I, you know, looking after my diet? Or, you know, am I having that, am I challenging my brain to keep it active? All of those kind of, and I can't remember, I always forget the other 2, but, you know, it's diet, breath, sleep. And a lot of people forget about sleep, you know, because especially with business owners that are, in fact, any working person, to tell you the truth, they're all busy doing everything that they forget. They see going to sleep as, oh, I haven't got time to sleep. I've got to do this, and that. But actually, it's that processing time, the detoxing time. What typical areas do you find business owners really struggle with in order the holistic approach of well-being? What's the biggest area?
I tend to flag up 4 areas, which is basically work, relationships, health, and leisure or play.
Yeah.
And where the imbalance is, and are they happy with the balance as it is? And if not, what scope is there to adjust that? Starting with the easiest thing first.
And I suppose everybody's term of the word balance is different. But what kind of guidelines do you give to business owners in terms of having an adequate level of self-care, but also work-life balance as well?
It's quite an individual thing. You've brought up sleep, so I'll start with that. Some people struggle to sleep, and they can put pressure on themselves to sleep, and of course that tends not to work.
No, that's true. That's true. The more you think about it, the more it's going to actually aggravate you, and that's the yeah.
So even if you can't sleep proper, at least allowing yourself the time to rest and recharge is going to have some benefits. So in allowing yourself that downtime, it's not laziness. Consider it rest and recuperation.
Yeah.
Or recharging your battery. Because well, you've probably heard the talk of it before. Basically, when it comes to we're like, our energy levels like a battery, and we've got a phone here, and if we've got all the apps open and they're all running at the same time, of course that energy level drains faster. And most people are like, oh, it's got 3%, it's fine, I can keep going. For us, yes, for us, we tend to do that. If it was like our device would be like, I'm going to lose it.
Let me carry on using it while it's charging as well.
We don't allow ourselves to, in effect, plug in and recharge in the same way as devices. We need that in the same kind of ways. It's like a playful, silly metaphor, but or at least with all the apps, if you don't need them all running, turn some of them off. Reduce the amount of things that you need to focus and process.
Yeah, and this is where less is more, you know, people, and I know women say they can multitask, but I've actually learned that sometimes multitasking isn't good, but also works on different on the type of task as well. And so it is recognizing what, you know, what I say to my clients is, what kind of person are you? Are you a morning person or an evening person? And, you know, if you're a morning person, it's a case of, well, actually, that's where I'm more creative. So what task can I do in the morning to actually make the maximum time? But at the same time, what tasks do I need to do that actually have different, you know, brain power? You know, creativity is that high level. Doing admin work could be a different level. And so that, you know, that's creating boundaries, but also time management of how you're doing your tasks and everything can actually help their brain function, and in a way cope with everything so that they're more effective as well. And was there anything else that you'd like to share in terms of what you know, what businesses are being challenged with today? I mean, you know, there are lots of economic challenges that are uncontrollable, but what do you find are the controllable factors that you make your business owners, your clients, actually aware of?
Well, the things out there, like I say, we've got limited control over. We can be aware, we can do our research. What I'm finding working with individuals is a lot of the pressure that's coming is actually more from themselves than any kind of outside force. It's like, I must do this, I must show up in this way. Oh crumbs, I'm knackered. Balancing that up. And sometimes it's about breaking things down, making them ultimately more manageable for yourself. It's like, right, what needs to happen, what can I delegate to other people? And that can be an interesting one, having the trust as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that we can do work on that, about the belief side on that. Sort of like, where did that fear come from? Is that 100% true? Where is that not true? That kind of business. I have a think a moment. I'm just allowing my brain to slow down, because ultimately it helps if we allow ourselves to slow down. And some of the tools is about doing that, because when we're thinking too fast, it's like lots of things competing.
Yeah.
From a neuroscience side, our brains are a bit like that. So we've got amygdala and basically limbic system in the middle. If you imagine all the things to worry about, whether they're real or not, that's filed there. And then thinking cap, prefrontal cortex is there at the front. Neck and everything older, including polyvagal, but that's again, that's to do with the fight or flight side. And these two bits, they compete with each other. So when we're het up, our thinking brain goes offline. The older part, the amygdala side, is like, by the time you've worked it out, we'll probably be dead. So I'm going to take over here. And that's why we are rubbish of coming up with ideas when we're stressed out. So the
Yeah.
fastest way to adjust from one mode to the other is ultimately with the breath and allowing yourself to slow down that way. You saw me do that a moment ago, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, when I noticed it.
Yeah.
And that's the fastest way to change gear, but teaching it in a way to empower staff that isn't like 20 minutes to 2 hours of going on mindfulness, because a lot of people think, oh, it's meditation. I haven't got time,
Yeah.
mate. So really, really fast, simple things that take no tools, that you can do pretty much anywhere.
And
Preferably not driving.
yeah.
Maybe slightly more time than you'd be at traffic lights, but really quite fast.
And I suppose that's the challenge. People say I don't have time for downtime, and they have that expectation of, where do I find 20 minutes or an hour and a time to lie down, or time to close my eyes. But actually, I mean, I've known people, especially when I used to travel around London, people will, they could just stare at the door and actually be in that meditation state for 2 minutes. Everyone's different. Everybody has their own way. Some people like to run, and that's their downtime. It is that, find out what works for you, and try it out, because everyone's different. And at the same time, you know life is like that. So there will be times when you need more downtime or more processing time, and times when you think, oh God, I'm just loving it. I'm on a roll here. So it is, taking that time to kind of say, well, I always say, we need that expert advice. Talk to yourself. What do I need right now? And I think it was Mel Robbins that said, you kind of go in within yourself to say, I love you. How can I serve you today? And it is taking that time to say, you've got to love yourself before you love other people. But take that time within yourself to say, what do I need today? And what can I do today to look after myself? And again, people are so busy, but I always say, if you really, I don't have the time to do this, but actually, if you really want to do it, you'll actually make, if it's that important, you'll actually make time for it. And so if you value your presence, you being alive, okay, for the people that you're actually serving, again, whether it's family members or your clients, then actually it's only up to yourself to actually take that ownership to say, if I want to show up every day, then I need to look after myself, so that, as you said, my mug has to be full. Okay, sometimes 3/4, but it has to be sufficient for me to perform whatever I choose to do today. But to have that moment, again, whether it's 2 minutes or 20 minutes or even 2 hours, to kind of say, what do I need? And what do I need, but also what don't I need? Because sometimes people say, oh, I need to do this and I need to do that. And I'm like, well, what, in fact, I was talking to someone yesterday, have a to-do list, but have a not to-do list. And what if if you've got these lists of things to do, what if you didn't do them? What would be the impact? And so I find that a lot of people are so busy that they're too busy saying they're busy without actually doing things. And so the build-up of mental health actually is that ownership within yourself to say you owe it to yourself, as well as the people that are dependent on you, to take care of yourself.
Yes, and a lot of the time I am flagging up with the people I'm working with, there's being busy and there's being productive.
Yeah. That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah, and sometimes, well, reasonably often, I use the Eisenhower grid with them. So the important and urgent grid. So important, not important, urgent, not urgent. If everything's in important and urgent, recalibrate that one.
I was going to say, yeah, redefine it. Yeah.
That's unsustainable. Yeah.
And so,
and
Emma,
from there you can prioritize down.
Yeah, I was just going to say more about yourself. Why you said you were a business analyst before, and now you're into being a qualified therapist. What made you transition from what you were doing before to actually focus on starting your own business?
Well, it's been bringing related things together, so it's been quite an interesting path. I started off doing quite, I guess, basic jobs, and they were boring, but they paid the bills. And
Yeah.
I was like, oh, am I really getting stuff out of this? So I started to focus on things that interest me, and that took me into complementary therapy, starting with Indian head massage. Then it was aromatherapy, reflexology, Reiki to master level, and hypnotherapy.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
And from there, because of the related parts of it, learned parts of timeline therapy. That encouraged me to hop from there to NLP. And more recently, I was doing coaching and work at that time because they had a network in it with it, and I found that quite interesting to do. I was like, oh, I like working with people. And part of the reason me going in this direction is doing the complementary therapy. Sometimes people are really, really quiet, and that's cool. Some of them like to talk, and I'm like, what do I do with this? So that's where I ended up going off on that tangent and learning about counselling and that side of things. And with counselling or therapies and coaching, it's the same kind of skill set. It's different starting points though. So for therapy, it's from really struggling to and surviving and being on an even keel, in effect, coping much better. And then from there to thriving and achieving those big goals and big aspirations.
And so why
Just
did you,
the same.
also why did you choose to focus on small to, to medium-sized businesses as opposed to the larger businesses?
What I'm finding is a lot of them are facing the same kind of challenges, and these are coming up again and again. Becoming quite well versed in that and understanding the challenge, well, like I say, the challenges that they're facing. And from my own experiences, I can empathize with some of the fears that can come with that.
Yeah. And I'm just, on the audience there, if anybody has any questions, feel free to put any comments and we can certainly read them out. Emma, is there anything that you'd like to share with our audience today? And again, this could be on the replay as well.
I think one of the main things I'd like to share is basically about putting pressure on ourselves, because we can be our own worst enemies in regards to that. So if I was to use an analogy, because it's been hot days this week, of watering the plants in the garden, if you had a hose pipe, I've been using dishwater and things, but if you had a hose pipe, you've got a flow of water.
Yeah.
If you're putting your pressure on yourself, it's like having a kink in that hose or putting your foot on it. It reduces that flow, that ability to perform. You've got the tools, you've got the knowledge, you've got everything that you need, but if you're putting the pressure on yourself, it's degrading how you show up and how well you can do things.
Yeah. In fact, I always say that if you never embarrass the version 1, then you actually started too late. And so just say to yourself, I am enough. I've got, and I'm just as guilty on this, I always feel that I'm not enough. But then, there's a story behind that and as well. But it is a case of, taking that time to say, if I don't start now, when am I going to start? But let me just go out. And again, this could be starting your business or starting the next phase of growing your business. But, at the same time, don't do it alone. People like yourself are there to help business owners as well as staff to take them through that journey, because it can be scary. I mean, when you look at the brain, it's always there on survival mode in terms of protecting you. And so when you're doing something new, your mind will definitely, always try to take you out of it, because it's like, oh, I'm not sure if you want to go there because I don't know what to expect. And so, this is, the brilliant role that you do, and is to take them through that, to kind of say, well, let's talk about this, and why do you feel like that? And then I think that's really important, is that, what you're doing today is actually helping business owners, but as well as their staff, to be proactive, because sometimes, when you, as you said, if you're not having that water, and suddenly you've got the dehydration, then it's actually, sometimes it could be too late. But you've got to have that constant drip feed of water going through to keep you hydrated. And the same applies with the humans. You can't carry on hoping that you'll be fine. So to have the again, whether it's counselling or some sort of therapy, to just kind of say, well, let me just have someone like Emma to kind of say, just touch base every so often to see what's, how am I doing? And do you find that, Emma, that business owners, as well as for their team as well, are willing to invest on a continuous basis to again, to be proactive rather than reactive when it comes to the well-being of their staff as well as themselves?
Usually, yes. And I just like to flag up those anxieties, those fears. Some people try to run from them or avoid them.
Yeah.
Ultimately, it's a really fine-tuned, well-practiced part of us that's trying to keep us safe, just in a really unhelpful way. And once we sort of tune into that and acknowledge that, it's like you were saying, yes, start before we're ready. What we want, and this is something I got from a lady called Andrea Callahan, who lives roughly half a mile in that direction. She's awesome. She was basically saying, your feet, what you want is on the other side of that fear. We can't see it. It's like a fog. It's like, oh, I can't get through it. But if you allow yourself to experience the discomfort's going, oh, this is unfamiliar. It's like, you know that already. Still allow yourself to go with that. You can work through it, and you can achieve amazing things when you allow yourself to do the scary thing.
Yeah.
I'm not saying take a big jump, just little steps, little incremental things to get used to it. And then you think, oh, I didn't think I could do that. Oh, I could do that. Oh, that's the problem. That's way less, that's smaller than I thought it was. And also allow yourself to acknowledge those. I can be a bit bad at, oh, I've done that. That's behind me now. Keep going. And it's encouraging all of us to go, well, if I sit back and think about it, what are those things that I'm able to do now that I thought I could never do? There are things that I think, can I honestly do that? Based on my experiences so far, probably, but it will be incremental and gradually working towards it without that pressure on ourselves.
Excellent. And so, Emma, we've come to a close, so thank you so much for your time today. And again, anyone that's watching, as well as the replay, if you have any comments, feel free to put your comments out there. I will put Emma's links in the caption later on. So thank you everyone for joining us and watching replay. Emma, thank you so much for your time, and I will see you later on in the week. Thank you very much, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.